Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our N4/intermediate lesson. I know there was some discussion with wa and ga in the channel, but sorry, we'll have to put that on hold and get back to it after. So last week, we were working on our te forms with ageru and kureru and morao. And this week, we are going to be jumping back into no. No is interestingly one of those particles that has a million different usages. Although most of them come back down to the main definition or the main usage that I mentioned when we very first started learning these. Does anyone remember what that is? What is in most cases, what is the job of no? What does no do fundamentally? Possession is, I feel, too limiting, way too limiting. It works at the beginning, it's a simple definition for it, but the thing I mentioned before, and possession falls into this category, but the way I like to think of it is it adds detail or information to a noun. Put another way, it takes a noun and makes it more specific. And so if we're talking about a book, how many books are there in the world? A billion. There's so many books. We have no idea which book, how many books, whose book we're talking about, and no can be used to take every book and specify a subset of that. So if it's watashi no hon, then it's my book. If it's takai hon, it's expensive books. That one doesn't have no in it, sorry. If you say nihongo no hon, Japanese books, it's used not necessarily just for possession, but it's used for taking a noun and making it more specific. And it can do that by saying whose it is, what type it is, so many different ways. And several of the no usages we're going to talk about today fall into that category. We're taking a noun and we're making it more specific, giving information to it using the no. And let's go ahead and jump into that. So these are two of the ways we're going to look at it. And this is just kind of a title page. So you're not expected to see all of this and understand, what it all means. These are just the two things we'll be doing. And I'm just going to skip through there. Okay, so these we have hit on before, but this is kind of a review, kind of something new. No here is not being used to show possession, but it's being used to apply information to the noun that comes after it. And in this case, this is one of those no's where it might mean nothing in English when you're translating it. It might be 3 or 4 words. It depends. And so if we have, Nihongo no sensei, we are referring to a Japanese teacher. And again, it gives it context. It helps you specify what type of teacher, you're referring to. And it could be Nihongo no sensei, to give you another example. It could be kyo no sensei. So that's not today teacher, it's the teacher for today, or it's today's teacher. It's not possession exactly. It's just taking of all the teachers we're talking about. Which teacher is it? Oh, it's today's teacher. Similarly, it can be used to, refer to like this with toki or time. If we say daigaku no toki, of all the time in the world, it's the time in university. And depending on the context, it could be when I was in university. Does this literally mean university time? No. But given the fact that you're probably not going to say daigaku no toki and end the sentence there. You're going to have more. You might say something like, daigaku no toki, sugoku isogashikatta. And with that really busy, and the fact that I'm speaking, you're going to translate that as when I was in university or when I was in college. But here, we have a very simple form of these nouns being put in front of another noun and not showing possession, but just adding additional information. Now, let's step it up a little bit. This is where we're getting this stuff that's completely new. It is possible in Japanese, and you've probably seen it before, just a little bit. We've seen it with mo. When we first learned mo, we also said sometimes you can see nimo. Sometimes we can see demo. And let's just review that real fast so we can see how these are being connected. Mo, among other things, means to. When you're adding a second situation, a second person, a second location, saying this person too, this food as well. And we said that you can use, nimo, for example, and it might end with a verb like ikimasu. So if you say gakko ni ikimasu, I go to school. And then you might say shigoto ni mo ikimasu, I also go to work. With this, we have those two particles working together, working as a set. And demo falls into the same category. No can also work this way. So let's take a look at the 5 examples on here. And I'm going to read them first. We have sensei kara no shitsumon, tomodachi e no kaado, gakko de no undoukai, Nihon made no ryoko, and shacho to no kaiwa. So I wouldn't recommend learning these as kara no or e no or de no. I don't think I've ever seen it referred to that way. You need to see them as 2 separate particles. And so let's look at them. So with this first one, sensei kara no shitsumon. In some cases, just the no might suffice. If you say sensei no shitsumon, depending on the context, that might work. The teacher's question. What's a teacher's question? That's probably the question that the teacher asked. But that language is somewhat simplistic, and we always go for clear language when we can. And so when we say sensei kara no shitsumon, what we're seeing here, and I'm going to type it out into the channel, if we tried to break this up, into chunks, it would look something like this. Sensei kara no shitsumon. So it's a question, it's a problem, it's a question. We're using no to add some more information about it. What question is it? It's the question from the teacher. Sensei kara is being hooked onto no to use to specify the question. Sensei kara no shitsumon. Oh, the question from the teacher. And similarly, this could be used, and we'll practice this just to warm up a bit. This could be used to talk about, something that you got from someone else. So if you said, I have a rock in front of me, and I went to a place in Niigata, which is where I live, called Itoigawa, which we went not there, but somewhere nearby. There's a place called Jade Coast, which due to the previous volcanic activity in the area, a lot of jade, as in the stone jade, appears. And we were looking for some jade, and we found some rocks that we're not quite sure if they're jade or not, but they might be jade. Anyway, they are from this area. So I might say something like this. Itoigawa, which is the name of the city, the area, Itoigawa kara no ishi. The ishi, the stone, that's from Itoigawa. So, what I'd like for you to do, if you want to try it out, is think about something you've gotten from someone else. Something you've gotten from someone else. And we're not doing full sentences. Let's just focus on this simple construct right now. Mention something that you've gotten from someone else. So I might say, my son likes to draw pictures, so I got a picture from him. 息子からの絵. A picture or a drawing from, what kind of picture is it? It's a picture from my son. So what about you? What is something that you've received from someone else? And don't forget the kara. So you're talking about, people are talking about mail that they've received. I'm just going to skip over that first one that someone typed. Presents, of course. Presents that you've gotten from people. Messages, pants, or slacks, depending on which word you prefer. All right, looking good. You guys are doing just fine. So let's take a look. If you're still typing, please type. Please finish up your typing. I don't want to stop you. I'm going to continue to talk. And just like karano, the rest of these particles can be combined with no to further illustrate, what you're talking about. So if we look at the other examples, we have, instead of something that you're getting from, we can talk about something you're sending to someone else. Tomodachi e no kado. A card, maybe a greeting card for a friend. A card that you're giving to a friend. We have undokai, which if you're in Japan, if you've ever taught in a Japanese school, these are sports days, the athletic days where the whole school comes out and all the kids participate in races and other kinds of silly games. That's an undokai. Where is the undokai? It's at the gakko. Gakko de no undokai. If we were referring to what we're doing right now. We could talk about the Discord de no evento. The event that we're currently doing at or in Discord. Discord de no evento. Made works. You could say Nihon no ryoko, a Japanese trip. You could also say Nihon made no ryoko. This one, if I was comparing between the two, Nihon no ryoko sounds like you're going to Japan and you're having a trip there, which is great. Please come to Japan. The yen is extremely undervalued right now, so it's, a good time for people to come. Nihon made no ryoko also works if you're just going to Japan. It might also suggest that, you might be going to other places and then ending in Japan. So Nihon made no ryoko sounds like the Nihon is kind of the end point. That's the way we've described made before, is it marks the end point for something, end point of a location, of time, a destination. So, maybe you're going to Taiwan first for a few days and then going to Japan. And that might be a Nihon made no ryoko. And last, I like saying this last one because I like the way tono sounds. It's fun to say. But shacho to no kaiwa. It was a conversation. It was a kaiwa. Who was the kaiwa with? It was with shacho. It was with the boss, the CEO. Now, so let's compare these two. Some of these may seem a bit superfluous. You might see sensei kara no shitsumon, the very top one, and you might say, well, can't you just say Sensei no shitsumon, the teacher's question. Of course, that was the teacher giving it. Why do we need to add this? This feels extra. This feels unneeded. Look at the last one, though. This one is an excellent example. If you say, let's compare the two. I'm typing it out in Discord. Say you have shacho no kaiwa. Who's talking with shacho in this situation? How many people are? You have no idea. It's very ambiguous. It might be shacho talking just in front of everyone, maybe answering questions. It might be them talking to someone else, a guest that came. It's just general. It might be a conversation you had with them, but there's not enough specificity there. However, if you say shacho to no kaiwa, you're saying this is a conversation that the CEO had that I was part of. So, in some cases, it might feel that, oh, I don't need to add this. This just the no is enough. But adding these extra particles helps give you a bit more clarity with what you're using. Okay. We're about to jump into a second set of no usages, but in case you have any questions about this particle combination, please ask now before we continue. Otherwise, we'll jump into the next set of no. I think we have 2 or maybe 3 more no usages. Yes, there's a lot of them, and we even have more next week. We're going to have 2 weeks of just no. And then we'll be done, I think, for a while. Okay, let's jump in. Let's keep going. This next one I feel is not quite as common. It's not as common, but it does pop up from time to time, and so it's worth having this in your head. This one is used for describing often jobs or a job or a position or a relationship that person, too many that's, that person has. And so take a look at these examples. They should be fairly self-explanatory once we look at them. So Yamada-san, one of the more common last names in Japan. If you say Bengoshi no Yamada-san, then you're referring to Mr. or Miss Yamada, the lawyer. And, how would we write this in Japanese? It might be Miss Yamada, comma, the lawyer, comma. It might be the lawyer, Miss Yamada. There's different ways that we can use it. But this is not specifying more so much that it is kind of equating, what's going on. With the second one, daigakusei no musuko. This one I might use. I don't have, I don't have 2 sons, but if I did, let's say one was in high school, one was in university, or if I just want to talk about my son and to help preface what's coming up next, talking about his classes or the major that he's going to choose, I might start off with this. Talking to someone that doesn't know my son well enough to know that he's in university, I might say daigakusei no musuko wa, and then start talking about their classes or their struggles or their projects that they're working on. And take a look at the English that the lesson mentions. It says, my son who is a college student. My son, the college student. There's not a single way you can translate these, but it's just taking musuko, son, and it is adding more information. It is specifying something about their position, their job, or their relationship. Tomodachi no Kao-chan. Kao-chan, my friend Kao. And this is really common English. We say that all the time. And I see a couple people in the Discord saying, well, I would have read that as college student's son. And from a grammatical perspective, you're not wrong. It could be that. Do keep in mind that we are giving simple examples here. We're just giving a noun or two nouns with a no in between them. And this is, it's almost a joke how often we say it, but it all boils down to context. And we don't talk in nouns. We don't say, university, son, classes, overtime. We have sentences, multiple sentences, and we just talk and talk and talk and talk. And thanks to that, we can say it's not why are we talking about this random university student's son? We're talking about my son, the university student. But what you should see here is that the no is a really easy way of connecting these two concepts without saying my son who is a university student at the moment kind of thing. Or saying, oh, Yamada-san, period. She is a lawyer, period. She is blah, blah, blah. This takes those concepts and just jams them together and makes it easier to get it out without extra language being needed. And again, depending on the thing, this is something that you may use often. I talk about, oh, my friend Tom, my friend Kalchan, my son Leo. And when we line up those nouns in English, you can use the no here to use them. And last, Nancy, we all know Nancy the Canadian. Possibly, there's multiple Nancys in the area. You have to specify which one it is. When I lived in Miyagi Prefecture, which is really close to where the terrible earthquake and tsunami hit, that would be 12 years ago now. I was living in a town of 15,000 people. I was the only foreigner in the entire town. And I was teaching English. And there were a number of other English teachers, not in my city, but in nearby cities. And there were 3 other Michaels in as many cities. So there was just, for some reason, there was a glut of Michaels in northern Miyagi. And so how would we refer to each other? In English, the city I was in was called Tajiri. So they would call me Tajiri Mike or Tajiri Michael. But if we needed to, specify it, we could say Tajiri no Michael or Maikeru back in the day. Or if those other Michaels came from Australia or Canada or somewhere else, we could say, for me, America-jin no Maikeru. Oh, the Michael from America. Oh, not the other one. It's that Michael. Now, before we practice this a little bit, I want to jump back and take a look at these 2 examples. My friend Carl. And note the word order. My friend Carl. It's opposite. Or no, it's not opposite. Excuse me. It's the exact same order that the Japanese has. Friend comes first. Carl comes next. This next example, Kanada-jin no Nanshi-san. Nancy the Canadian. In English, we have a bit more flexibility here in terms of word order. Whereas in Japanese, we're a bit more restricted. So we always have, and keep this in mind, because what's No's job again? It's used to add information, add specificity, add detail. So the more general thing always comes last. Thing we're talking about. And that extra information we're adding comes first. So Yamada-san's the topic. We're adding the information that she's a lawyer. My son happens to be a university student. Talking about Kalchan. Oh yeah, Kalchan's my friend. And then we're talking about Nancy. Oh, which Nancy? Oh yeah, Nancy, the one from Canada. The Canadian Nancy. So English has more flexibility, but keep in mind that the thing we're actually talking about is what always comes second. And then no is used to add information onto that. Now let's practice this just a little bit before we continue on with the next section. The next section is probably, I'd say, it's the hardest. Although you'll be okay, you'll be fine. But let's practice this, and if you have any questions, go ahead and mention them before we jump into the next section. So let's talk about friends. Either a friend you have, a friend you just made up on the spot. It doesn't matter. Keep in mind, this is something that I'm sure they thought, is this what a teacher should be saying? But I used to teach TOEFL classes in a Japanese high school. TOEFL is an English test for non-native English speakers who want to study at an English university. And so it's university level English, and there's writing components where you have to write in 25 minutes, you have to write a ridiculous number of words about some topic. Yeah, TOEFL, TOEFL. And I would often see people who they'd have a question, and for example, the question might say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they would spend 10 minutes thinking about, well, I kind of want to be a doctor, but I'm not so sure about that because I also want to be a outer space lawyer. And they waste all this time thinking about their answer. And I tell them, just lie. And I wouldn't recommend lying if the content of your answer meant anything. For example, college admissions. But right now, we're practicing Japanese. The goal of today is not for me to get to know you better. And so if I say, tell me about your friend, the reality is I don't know your friend. I'll never meet your friend, more than likely. And just like the TOEFL test, sometimes it was a debate style question. Do you think it's better to live in the country or the city? And people would really think about which one. I said, don't just make up answers. They want to see, can you use English effectively? Right now, I want to see, can you use this Japanese effectively? Can you use it? And so don't worry about, oh, I don't have any friends right now that I want to talk about. You just use, and this is the chance to make up crazy stuff, which makes it easier to remember. Say whatever. If you're in a situation where they're asking for your actual information, you shouldn't lie, of course. But language practice is the best time to lie when we're in a classroom environment because you can just make up whatever. You can say, my friend lives on the moon. And that's great because that'll help you, have it stick. So I'm going to say, please tell me about someone you know, and, please use this no qualifier to give me some information about them. So let me give you an example. I'm going to say, Bobby. I don't have a friend named Bobby. I've actually never met a Bobby in my life, amazingly. My friend Bobby lives on the moon. 友達のボビーは月に住んでいます。Tell me about your friend. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about someone you just made up on the spot. Not Yamada-san. You can call them, chocolate ice cream san. And they happen to be a firefighter. And right now they're running a marathon. Whatever. It's all good. But try using this no in front of the noun to qualify it. Tell us what their job is. Tell us what their relationship to you is. And then after the wa, give us a little bit of information. Give us something silly. And of course, you don't have to go as, as complex as I did or as some people are doing. You can keep it simple. There doesn't have to be any nouns on the back end or any verbs. You can just say, for example, I like Megumi's answer. They said, Tomodachi no Sara wa Italiajin desu. My friend Sarah is Italian. Perfect. It is an extremely efficient sentence. It gets out a lot of information just by using that no, by sticking that no in there. If any of you are interested in a couple of more complex sentences, I see some people chaining no's, two or more no's. Aru-san had tomodachi no Mara. That's what we're doing now. And then they took that and used that. So my friend Mara, they're not even talking about Mara. They're talking about Mara's dog. Tomodachi no Mara no inu wa chizu ga suki. Perfect. I love it. Or Shiromoka is talking about. Actually, I will say I can't read that first character, but it almost looks like maybe they wanted to put densetsu. Maybe not. But Aidoru no Pachi-san. Anyway, I'll give you about 30 more seconds to type these out, and then we will jump into the last category for today. There we go, densetsu. We should all know densetsu because it's The Legend of Zelda. Densetsu no Zelda. Okay, let's jump. Oh, you're missing out. Zelda's so much fun. Let's jump into the last category of no. Not the last no, but the last no for today. And we're jumping into, oh, that's a good picture. We're jumping into a slightly more complex one. And this next panel is going to be actually the hardest part of it, is the abstract of it. Excuse me. But we are going to focus on slightly more complex verbs that we can, or not complex verbs, complex forms, excuse me. That will include verbs. So let's take a look at these examples here. There are 4. And let me give you I'm going to call it the easy version. Let's say we're talking about a person and we say their hair is long. We might say this. この人は髪が長い. This person, their hair is long. Or this person has long hair. This is what we've done up until now. We stick the noun, the subject first, the topic first, and then we give the information afterwards. Or we might say, この猫は目がきれい. And these are fine. But what if we want to talk about that person? What if we want to talk about the cat? We don't want to say the cat has beautiful eyes. We want to say the cat with the beautiful eyes is living on Mars or whatever. How do we get all that information and stick it in front of it? So there's a couple ways of doing it. And the first way that we use, we can take, now this is a relative clause. We'll talk about relative clauses, I want to say in 2 weeks. But what you can do is just take that chunk of information and drop it in front of the noun. So using that first example, この人は髪が長い. You could do this. I'm typing if it works out. You could say this. 髪が長い人. So I could say, oh, maybe someone showed up with long hair and we don't know who it is. You might say something like this. 髪が長い人は誰? The person with the long hair. Who is that? And this is fine. This Japanese is completely natural. This Japanese is okay. However, what if you need to use ga again? So what if maybe in your culture, a person with long hair is really important. And all of a sudden, this person with long hair walks into the room and you say, 髪が長い人が来ました! Oh my goodness, the person with long hair came. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Kind of thing. All of a sudden, you might start to think, I've got that ga at the beginning. I also have a second ga. I'm not sure I want two gas. I want to stick to one ga. What you can do here is you can drop the ga out and stick a no in its place. And I like to think of it this way, is that whenever you had a ga originally, or a wa sometimes, you're dropping that out and using a no in order to stick it in front of something else. So you're taking a relative clause, a bit of information, which might be a noun, might be a verb, might be an adjective, and you're sticking that no in front of it. So let's come back to the examples that we have on the screen. So let's look at the first one that we just did. Kami no nagai hito. The person with long hair. And again, you could say kami ga nagai hito. That'd be fine. That'd be fine. The second example, the cat with pretty eyes. The cat with beautiful eyes. Mei no kirei na neko. Again, you could say mei ga kirei na neko. And that would be okay. That would be fine. However, you could not say mei wa kirei na neko. You could not do that. So the no would be fine, the ga would be fine. And you'll see, yes. So both of those are fine. This third example actually uses the ga just to show you that, hey, that's okay. Kodomo ga asobu game. The game that kids play. Kodomo ga asobu game. And sorry, jumping back. This kodomo ga asobu game, you could, again, switch out that for a no if you wanted to. Kodomo no asobu game. But all of these, if you want to use more simple Japanese, you could stick game, you could stick neko, you could stick hito at the front of the sentence, and then a wa, like you usually do. Kono neko wa mei ga kirei desu. And that'd be fine. But this is taking that information, dumping it in front of the noun so that you can talk about that topic a little bit more. So let me give you the last example. Watashi no yonda hon. The book I read. The book that I read. So I happen to be reading a book called The Expanse now, which some of you might have seen is a sci-fi TV show that was playing and then it went to Amazon Prime. And for those of you that this has nothing to do with Japanese, if you watch the TV show and you liked it, read the books. Not only are they better, but there's 3 more books that continue after the TV show ends, and they're amazing. But anyway, if I was using, more simple Japanese, I might say this. I might say something like this. I'm going to type it out. I might say, 私はこの本を読んだ。面白かったです。I read this book. It was interesting. But typically you want to get those 3-4 word sentences, and if you can, combine them. You want to make it sound a bit more natural, because probably a native speaker would not say this. They'd combine it. And so instead, we're taking that. What did you do to the book? It's which book is it? The book that you read. And you could say, 私の読んだ本は You could say something like this. 私の読んだ本は面白かったです. Because we're talking about the book. The book, which book? Adding specificity. The book that I read was interesting. So, I've already given you an example, but we're going to let renshuu give us a few more examples. Oh, and you know what? I didn't plan this at all, but the example I put is right there. So the first example, for the person, 髪の長い人はあそこにいます. The person with the long hair is over there. Again, we're in our new world where people with long hair are more important than everyone else, and so it's worth mentioning that the person with long hair is over there or over here. So, 髪の長い人はあそこにいます. Or the second one, which I promise you, it's just coincidence. 私の読んだ本は面白かった. The book that I read was interesting. And again, keep in mind that I could have said 私が読んだ本は面白かった. And that's okay, leaving that ga in there. But, when you get more language, when you learn more Japanese, it's not just to say, oh, well, if I can use the ga, if I can say watashi ga yonda hon, I'm just going to use that. I'm going to keep it simple. You can always control the Japanese that comes out of your mouth, the Japanese that you type. You cannot control what you're going to hear, what you're going to read. So you're going to need to know that if you see these no's pop up, that's what they're doing. That's what their job is. We can even get, a bit more complex and maybe overly so. How many no's do we have in the sentence? 1, 2, 3, 4. So take a look at this and try. Please use spoiler tags. If you don't know how to use the spoiler tags, it's these pipes. A pipe that looks like that. Excuse me. Put 2 pipes up and then do this and try and translate. How would you say the sentence that's currently on the screen? 髪の長い人は大学の時の友達の鈴木さん. So give it a shot. But please use the spoiler tags. That way if you type the answer out, it doesn't spoil it for anyone else. But I'll give you a minute or two to try and parse that all together. Now this is overly complicated, but it's just to show you that, hey, you could put all these together. You can't see the screen. Oh no. I'm going to type out the sentence for you. There we go. You can see in the answers, looking at the answers, that some people are making it a bit more casual than others. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So let's look at it. So again, there's not a this translation is correct and all the other ones are incorrect. There's different ways that we can do this. But the person with long hair is my friend from college, Mr. or Miss Suzuki, or if you're sticking to the honorifics, Suzuki-san. Breaking it down, let's look at our topic. Our first thing, kami no nagai hito. That's what we were just doing. The person with long hair. And we're talking about them. There's our wa. What kind of toki? Daigaku no toki. So in university, or when the speaker was in university. No tomodachi no Suzuki-san. So Suzuki-san is ultimately the last thing. That's the thing we're talking about that comes last. Who is Suzuki-san? Your friend? Well, which friend? The friend you met yesterday? The friend from when you were a child? No, the friend from a time. Well, which time is that? The time when I was in university. My friend from university. And by the way, who are they? Oh, they're the person with long hair. So I wouldn't expect you to see this many no's stuck together, but you can see all three different usages of no that we had come together. And that's it. And I'd like to say that we're done with no, but we are not. There's more no. And the next lesson we will finish up with our no's, and we'll probably be done with them for the rest of N4. But there are a few more no's. And let me just mention, do we have any questions with these usages? I'll go ahead and jump back to that one. If we don't, we will go ahead and finish up today's lesson. But don't worry about asking questions. There's the only bad question is one that's not asked. If you've got a question and you have a chance to have someone answer it, I always say go for it. Any questions? Shiromoka, you had a question about no with adjectives. So, for example, is there something you'd like to say, like how do I say this, and you're not sure how to do that? Generally speaking, if you come up with an example, just let me know now or after. But generally speaking, the no's are not really going to be used with adjectives unless they're coming before adjectives. For example, let me give you a quick example. So if we're talking about a book, and it's a book. Now this is a bit superfluous because usually you just say it's expensive, takai. But if we wanted to force it out and say the price is high, nedan ga takai hon, between the adjective and the noun that's coming after it, there's nothing special here. But if you wanted to talk about this book later on, you might say, okay, I'm going to drop that no, or I'm just going to drop the ga and replace it with a no, and have something like this: nedan no takai hon. So the only time you're really going to see adjectives and no's mixed together is when there was originally a ga. There was originally a ga, and you're dropping that ga out and sticking the no in its place. So it's not the no is working with the adjective, it's that the no is replacing the ga. Typically because it's coming in front of a noun. That being said, we are out of time for today, but I can continue to help you after the lesson if you have any follow-up questions. But thank you everyone for joining today's lesson. And this video will be available inside of Discord as well as inside of renshuu once we get it uploaded. Thank you so much, and I hope it helped you out.